Hello and welcome back to the channel for our weekly by-election roundup. And actually it's the penultimate weekly by-election roundup for 2025 because next week is the final round of by-elections that are happening across these councils for this year. So there's going to be a couple of weeks off until we come back in mid to early January. So you're going to have to find some content to fill in on these Friday evening slots between those times. If you haven't already, please do hit the subscribe button. We do some very unique UK election coverage on this channel, going down into these local council by-elections that happen pretty much every week. Look, you don't kind of get this, I think, granular detail from anywhere else on YouTube. So if you're interested, please do come and join. Of course, also please leave a like on the video as well. It helps greatly. For those of you who are subscribed and who have been here before, you may notice that the overlay has largely been stripped back. I've had a few comments since I brought it in a number of months ago. Every now and again, people saying it kind of gets in the way a little bit. And I have to say, I do think I agree. When I was doing my preview videos in the last couple of weeks, I've had to turn it off to kind of make screen space. So I agree. So I've kind of stripped it right back. If you're particularly passionate about the old overlay, let me know in the comments and it can make a comeback. But it's gone for now. Get straight into it. Pennyroyal in Caerphilly then. Plaid win, which is not a surprise by any stretch of the imagination. Plaid have 60% of the votes. They increased it even by 6 points. Very strong result for them. Now, the main story here, as it was really for that Caerphilly by-election results for the Welsh Parliament that happened a couple of weeks ago, is Labour's score down 24 points. Look, Labour are staring into the abyss, I think. In just 18 months, they have managed to, I think, replace the Conservatives in terms of who's in the worst existential crisis. Look, the Tories aren't out of the woods. I've said a number of times on this channel that I think they're pretty much a spent force in their current guise, at least. But Labour are, if you watch the video on the channel a few weeks ago, the 2026 Welsh Parliament preview video, they're going to get pretty much wiped out in Labour. They're going to be reduced to a rump of seats in Wales. Sorry, not in Labour. They're going to be reduced to a rump of seats in Wales. If you watch the video on Tuesday about Scotland, you'll see very much the same. I mean, not actually reduced because they had a poor result 4 years ago or 5 years ago, whatever it was, in Scotland. But it's going to be just as bad, if not slightly worse, next year. And of course, obviously across England, they're losing out all over the place. So they are staring into oblivion, Labour, and I don't know how they come back, frankly. I'm not sure a change of leadership is going to be the tonic that they seem to think it is. Reform, 26.5%, clearly in second place, but obviously a long way behind. But look, therein lies the battle for Wales next year. As that Wales preview video sort of highlighted, it's going to be Plaid versus Reform. That is going to be the dynamic. And like I said in that video, I think the sort of path to forming a government in Wales is going to be easier for Plaid than it is for Reform, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. A pretty miserly turnout, I have to say, 16.6%. That's bad, even by what is pretty poor local by-election turnout standards. That is very low. And obviously a big majority of 800 votes, 51 points over Reform in second place for Caerphilly. As you can see on the screen there, while I was saying that, this was a Labour seat, or is a Labour seat, that they won in 2024. And look, I mean, it's not looking particularly good if you're that Labour MP for Caerphilly, is it? Moving on then to Redhall and Lichfield ward in Darlington, and more bad news for Labour. They were defending here, and Reform have gained off of them. Yeah, I mean, we've just spoken about Labour sort of staring into the abyss and oblivion and all that. And this is what we're talking about, former heartland areas of England as well, not to mention Wales and Scotland, where they're just, they're getting crushed. Reform here came straight in at 37.7% of the vote. So, look, still lowish share of the vote to be winning on. Not decisive, but higher than what we've seen. It's sort of above 35 is kind of the new above 40, I think, at the moment in the current state of politics in the UK. Labour then were down 37 points. I mean, that is extraordinary. There's nothing I can say where I'm not going to be repeating what I've just said, but look, get in the comments with what you think. Is there any way back for Labour? Is changing the leader going to help when they're seeing this sort of just desertion of their vote? Look, I think it's very difficult to see them coming back. Looks like Lib Dems just about beat Labour, did they? Yeah, they did. So Labour didn't even come second. Lib Dems on 17.3. This is, they didn't stand here last time, so just under a fifth of the vote for them. And the Conservatives actually also beat Labour. So Labour into fourth place in a format that is extraordinary. I hadn't even seen that before I did the video, actually. So Labour have been relegated down to fourth place in a seat that was formerly, or an area that is formerly a heartland. That means that this is really bad for Labour, isn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. Turnout here was 27.5%, so a little bit below that new average of 30 that we've been seeing recently. 143 majority, which is 16 points for just under 16 points for Reform. So a fairly comfortable victory for Reform, actually, up in Darlington. Moving on then to Seaton Ward in East Devon. And Conservatives were defending, and as expected, the Liberal Democrats have won. They beat the Conservatives, and look, again, talking about the Conservatives not being out of the woods, once again, the Conservatives in a seat where they're defending have not come second. They've come third behind Reform. But firstly, Lib Dems win 41% of the vote, a very healthy increase of their vote share, as you can see there, up 21 points to 41.3% of the vote. As I say, Reform in second place on just under 30% of the vote, so a pretty strong showing from them there. And then the Conservatives down just under 10 points, so not even that much of a reduction, really, but enough to see them decline down into third place, comfortably third place as well. And look, it is true, isn't it, across various of these areas now, vote Conservative, get Lib Dem or Labour. I don't think it's that simple, by the way. I don't really like those arguments. I disagree that things are that straightforward. You know, if the Conservatives didn't stand here, would that mean that Reform got 20.9% extra of the vote? I don't necessarily think that that's how it works, but you can make the argument. Whereas, of course, in the last, up until May this year, really, the Conservatives were trying to make that point about voting for Reform, but it's been totally flipped on the inverse. So a 31.8% turnout, so there you go, a bit above that 30% average, good turnout in Devon, and a 12-point margin of victory for the Lib Dems is comfortable enough. And look, the Lib Dems have been doing really well in Devon. They've won pretty much every by-election that we've covered, I think, down in that part of the world in the last few weeks, so doing very, very well down there. Okay, Fort William and Ardnah Merkin in Highland next. And if you remember, if you watched the video last week, we did the preview. It says Lib Dem gain off the SNP. It is because the SNP have lost a seat to the Lib Dems. But in terms of how we look at the vote share, this is more like a Liberal Democrat hold, actually, because as we can see from last year, the Lib Dems had 60% of the vote almost. A big lead on the first round, and just as a reminder, these local councils in Scotland are elected via single transferable vote. So you can prioritise your vote, essentially. Not going to go into it now, but the Lib Dems had a big advantage last time, massive win on the first round of voting. So really, we were expecting to see the Liberal Democrats win this, and they have. They did see quite a pretty decent drop in their vote share, mind you, by 18 points. But still comfortable enough winners. SNP were in second. They increased ever so slightly, 3.5 points. Reform down there just below 10 as well. So seeing them sort of make the board in Scotland, but this is not an area of the country where we would expect to see Reform do all that well. 26% turnout up there in Scotland as well, or in Highland, is again a little bit below that 30% average. We will move swiftly on then to Armitage and Handsacre in Lichfield. So some good news for the Conservatives, and there is another good news story for the Conservatives in this video as well, so hang around to find out about that. But Conservatives hold in Lichfield, and that was one of my two scenarios. I thought it'd be a Conservative hold or a Reform win. Those were going to be the two parties vying for this seats, and so it's transpired. The Conservatives lost 6 points, which is not too dramatic, is it? Down then to just below 50% of the vote now, to just under 47% of the vote. Comfortable enough hold for them. Reform were in the clear second place. They came straight in at 32% of the vote, which is again not miserly by any stretch of the imagination. And if you remember from that preview, Lichfield in the county council elections in May, the Lichfield divisions were split equally between Conservatives and Reform. They had 4 each. So to me, it was always going to be between these two, and that's how it transpired. Worst is looking at Labour again, down 23.5 points. Kind of labouring the point, but just to say that these massive vote share declines for Labour are by no means extraordinary now, are they? I mean, I do keep saying they're extraordinary because I suppose they are, but they are extraordinary, but they're not a surprise, are they? They happen routinely, week in, week out. 22.4% turnout, again, is pretty low, and 23-point margin of victory for the Conservatives, so it was a pretty comfortable hold for them over in Lichfield. Right, South Kesteven next, then over to Lincolnshire, which we know is a very, very strong area of the country for reform. And as you can probably see, spoiler alert, they won both. But starting with the first one, I don't know if it's Aveland or Aveland. Conservatives were defending. So here the Conservatives have lost out to reform, and this is what I mean. This is what I mean by the crisis for the Conservatives seems to be less existential than for Labour now, because they are able to hold some seats, as we saw previously. But for Labour, you're just surprised if they hold anything at the moment. So, look, I think the Conservatives are in a rough spot. They're still going to lose out massively to Reform, but I actually see their situation slightly better than Labour now. So Reform gained. They came in at 41% of the votes, so up 26.5. They stood here in 2023. If you remember, I said in the preview that having stood here in 2023 and got a decent amount of the vote, I was expecting Reform to win this quite comfortably, because if they got that in 2023, before Farage, before all that's happened in the last 18 months, then my theory would be that they would do very, very well, and so they have. Conservatives down 19 points, so yeah, bad result for them there, down to less than 40% of the votes. The Greens came in and got 16% of the vote, to be fair to them. A good showing, I suppose, but nowhere near winning. A 35.6% turnout is very decent. Above, again, that average, or kind of more average recently, of 30%. So look, a good win for Reform up in Aveland, South Kesteven, and they got another one in Belmont. So there's independent standing here, and if you watched the preview video last week, I think all three of the councillors on this ward were independents, which made me think maybe the independent would come through and win, but no, Reform win here as well. They come in at a lower, this time, 33.4% of the vote, which is, again, a low percentage to be winning on, but enough to get them over the line. Conservatives ever so slightly behind on 33.1, so a tiny margin of victory there for Reform. The independent did come in third place, but from the previous independent down almost 30 points, which is just what's decided it. Turnout, again, a somewhat disappointing 21% here in Belmont. So look, two very good results for Reform in Lincolnshire. It's what we would expect with it being such a strong part of the country for them, really. So two gains for Reform in South Kesteven. Right, and here's the best news story of the night of the day for Conservatives. Eaglescliffe West in Stockton-on-Tees. The Conservatives were defending and they held. I think I did predict Reform to win. But actually, the Conservatives increased their vote share by 4 points here to over 60% of the vote. So look, that's a good result for the Conservatives. They'll hang on to that, I'm sure. It's mixed news for the Conservatives, isn't it? They held two and lost to Reform. So, kind of is the story of them at the moment. Reform are in second place, 24% of the vote, so a decent whack behind. Improved on their vote share from previously, up to 17 points. So here, the theory about standing in 2023 and increasing a lot doesn't work, because they stood in 2023 and only increased 17 points. Increase of 17 points is very respectable, but not to the same degree of getting like we saw in Lincolnshire just a moment ago. So look, yeah, big win for the Conservatives there. They'll be very, very happy to not only win but see their vote share increase there. Again, a good turnout in this one. It's a bit feast or famine on turnout this week. 36% of turnout in Stockton-on-Tees, so a good hold for the Conservative Party. And indeed, they'll be heartened to see their vote share holding up and even increasing in a constituency that they won in 2024, one of the few ones they managed to hold on to. So that's good news for them. Right, the last one, and I suppose in some ways this is the story of the day, really, for me, in my opinion, because Reform have won their first Scottish seat. Now, I mean, in terms of they've actually won an election in Scotland. That's the first time we've seen that happen. Whitburn and Blackburn Ward, West Lothian Council, again, Labour defending, and they've lost out to Reform. Yeah, look, if you watch the 2026 Scotland preview video I did on Tuesday, you'll know that the kind of summary of that was that Reform are going to shock people in Scotland in 2026. I think I don't think people think of Scotland as being a very reform voting sort of place. People kind of see Scotland as a very, very left wing, the whole area as being a very left wing region, basically. But like I always say, I'm not all that confident in my Scottish take, so I'd be fascinated to hear your comments on this. So get in the comments, please, and let me know what you think about Scotland and just the general demeanour, I guess. I don't know what the word is really, but I don't necessarily see. I think it's unfair to characterise all of Scotland as being sort of synchronous with the SNP ideology. I don't think that's very respective. Anyway, into the result itself. Reform then get 32% of the vote in the first round of the voting. I believe I saw that they won this at stage 8. So where Reform struggle on this single transferable vote is that even when they do quite well in the first stage, there isn't much scope for them getting votes transferred across. Like, for example, they get very little from the SNP or from Labour or the Lib Dems. Like, those voters don't really vote, don't put the Reform down as one of their lower priorities. So that tends to be what scuppers Reform. But look, they've done enough at the first round, it seems, to sort of maintain their lead throughout the counting. And look, they've got like I say, they've won their first seat in Scotland, which is I think important. And look, they're going to win seats in Holyrood next year, so that record was going to be obliterated in May anyway. But yeah, like I say, I think Reform are going to surprise quite a few people up in Scotland next year. Turnout up here was 22%, so again fairly low, somewhat disappointing. And like I say, a feast or famine this week on the turnouts. You seem to be comfortably over 30 or way under 30. Another thing that I think I've seen people commenting that they'd like to see be factored into these videos is a sort of summary of what happened for the week. So we'll do that now. So on a net basis and only including the sort of main parties, so not looking at independents and stuff, we'll just do a who's gained and lost on a net basis. So Reform, big winners from the week again, as they have been so often, up 4 seats this week. The Liberal Democrats, again, are often winners, and they're up 2 seats. The Conservatives were down 2 seats, and Labour also down 2 seats. So that is pretty much what we see a lot, isn't it? Reform and the Liberal Democrats gaining. Depends on where the votes happen, about which of those does better. But Reform gaining, Liberal Democrats gaining, and the main 2 parties losing out. Right, stick around and we will go and have a very quick look at the preview for next week, the final round of by-elections for 2025. All right, then, the final week of by-elections for this year, and we've got 5 to come up next week. It's actually a fairly quiet week as we compared to what we've had in the last few weeks. We start up in Blackpool, Greenlands ward, Labour defending, and they're defending a 44.6% vote share. The Conservatives were not too far behind, actually, on pretty much 40%. This is going to be interesting because Reform, as far as the nowcast goes for general election predictions and what have you, Reform have been ahead in Blackpool for a long time now. So look, they stood here in 2023, they got 6% of the vote. Now we've seen in this video already sort of the theory that if they stand in 2023, they do very well. We've seen that vindicated once, we've seen it kind of refuted once. So we'll wait and see what happens. Could be that you get 2 pretty hefty vote share declines for Labour and the Tories. I think Labour will have a massive vote share decline. Again, probably in excess of 20, if not even 25%. Tories will be interesting to see how much they sort of fall off from their 40%, if they fall off at all, of course. But I expect Reform to do well. I would go as far as saying I would expect Reform to win, because, like I say, as far as the nowcast suggests, they are very, very strong in Blackpool. And of course, Blackpool, I believe, is where the Reform pub is. So, I mean, if that's not enough to win you an award in Blackpool Council, I don't know what is. So that would be my guess. There's a few more people on the ballot paper than last time as well. Well, an independent, the Liberal Democrats, and Reform. So 3 extra on the ballot paper. Reform were on it last time. So 2 extra, the Liberal Democrats and independent. So yeah, that'll be an interesting one to see. The next one, St. Column Minor and Cullen in Cornwall. And it's a Reform defence. Obviously, they won this in the 2025 May elections. I don't think Reform will win this, I have to say. They won it with 36% of the vote in May. Second in first place ahead of the independents, who had 29% of the vote. Look, they may win. I don't know. I should have looked into it. I'm sorry I didn't, but I don't know if the independent here is an independent or if they're the maybe on Kernau. I don't know if they come up as an independent or another, but it's not. Cornwall's not been great for Reform since May. It's been one of those where it's been a bit manic, a little bit messy, not very pretty. Of course, in the immediate aftermath of May, they had the most seats. They never ran the council because the Liberal Democrats did a deal with Mebyon Kernow and the Independents on the council. But it's not gone very well for Reform in Cornwall. They've had defections, they've had suspensions, all that sort of stuff. A bit messy. So we'll wait and see. But I just think based off that, I reckon they'll probably see their vote share decline by maybe 5 or 6%, which will probably be enough for somebody else to sneak in and win. But we'll have to wait and see. That would be my theory going into it. Next one up is Market Harborough, Logan in Harborough. Now, last time I said, I think there was a Harborough by-election recently, and I said Reform wouldn't win, and they did. But I'm going to stick with what I said last time. I do see this area as being more Liberal Democrat and Conservative, and you can see that from the bars. In fact, this was last up this year. So Reform this year got 14.5%. Are they going to improve on that enough to win? I doubt it, probably, to be honest. But the Conservatives then got 31.3% of the vote. The Lib Dems got 27% of the vote. So clearly, this is a Lib Dem seat that's been won. It's a secondary seat. You know, it's a multi-council award. The Conservatives probably came top, and then the Lib Democrats have won a second or a third seat, depending on how many are in there. I think the Lib Dems have got probably a decent chance of defending this. But then, seeing as the Conservatives did win, only very narrowly, but they did win this year. There's a chance that the Conservatives actually get a gain here off of the Liberal Democrats. If they can replicate this result, of course, that will be the case. So maybe advantage to the Conservatives there. South Ribble, Broad Oak Ward, South Ribble Council. Big Lib Dem majority here. They got 65.5% of the vote last time up in 2023. Look, again, Lancashire. It is, or what it is as of May this year in the county council elections. A strong area of the country for Reform, but as we saw with that other Lancashire by-election that happened recently, I can't remember where it was now. It's near, in that area anyway. The Lib Dems do have their little pockets of very strong support. This looks very much like one of those areas. Wouldn't be surprised to see Reform come in ahead of the Tories and get second place. Labour will probably vanish down to about 4% or something based off their recent results. So I would say probably Lib Dems will hold quite comfortably with Reform in a distant second place would be my guess. And the last one for 2025, Pakefield in Suffolk. Conservatives are defending. You can see they got 34.2% of the vote last time. The Labour Party got 40%. So again, same thing. This would have been is a multi-council award. Labour came top. Conservatives got enough of the vote to win a councillor, which is who's defending here. So you would say, well, advantage to Labour, but I don't think that's going to be the case. I expect, again, Labour to have a big vote share decline. Pakefield Ward is in Lowestoft on the Suffolk coast. Reform, according to the Nowcast, are doing very well over there. So I would expect Reform to have a strong result here. Whether the Conservatives can fend them off and win marginally, we'll have to wait and see. But I think I might back Reform to get a gainer here. And we'll just see how bad that vote share decline is for the Labour Party as well. But that is it. That will be it. That's all the by-elections for this year. As for when the next ones are, I'm not entirely sure. You can see a couple down the bottom of the screen there, the 22nd and the 29th of January, but I'm not sure they've all filled in properly yet. I think there's one maybe on the 13th as well. So we'll have to wait and see. I'll let you know as soon as I know. But that's it for this week. Guys, thank everybody for watching. It's been a bit of a longer video. There's a lot to get through on that video. So thank you very much if you made it all the way to the end. Once again, if you haven't already, please do subscribe and to the channel and like this video, please. That would be most appreciated. There will be another May 2026 preview video, which should be up on Tuesday. Haven't decided what region I'm going to do just yet, but that should be up on Tuesday evening, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Make sure you get the notification bell hit as well. That's it, guys. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all on the next one.